I know this one from both sides of the table. I've sat in the chair across from the guy who's described this, and I've lived a version of it myself. There's a specific kind of alert that doesn't turn off just because the reason for it's gone. Come home, the house is quiet, everybody's safe, and some part of you is still doing a slow lap of the room anyway. Checking locks a second time, clocking who's in the parking lot, running a threat assessment on a Tuesday that never asked for one. The guy in his 40s sat across from me a while back. Married, kids, good job, the kind of life that looks settled from the outside. And he said something I hear from men constantly in one shape or another. I don't know how to explain this without sounding weak. I feel like something's about to go wrong all the time, and nothing's actually going wrong. He'd already run the checklist 100 times in his own head before he ever said it to me. Marriage, fine. Job, fine. Kids, fine. But his body wouldn't stand down. And here's the whole thing, in one sentence, before we go any further. Because I want you holding on to this the entire time. Not 5 things, just this one. The alarm's still ringing, and the fire is already out. That's it. That's the entire message. Everything else is just unpacking that one sentence. Something happened once, a real fire, a real threat, a real danger, and it trained a part of you to sound the alarm. That part did its job. It kept you, the people who you love, safe. But the fire's out now. It's been out for a while, maybe years. Nobody ever told the alarm, so it's still ringing in a house that isn't burning. That is not weakness. That's not a failure to man up, and it's not thin faith. That's just an alarm that never got the message. So where'd the alarm get installed? Because for men especially, it's rarely just one place. For some guys, it's formal training, military, law enforcement, first responders work. You get trained deliberately to scan the room the second you walk into it. Exits, threats, what's out of place. The training is good. It's supposed to be there. Problem is, nobody hands you the training for turning the alarm off once the deployment is over, the shift ends. So you're standing in your own kitchen and the alarm's still ringing from a fire that went out years ago on the other side of the world. For other men, it's what you had to become as a kid because nobody else was going to hold it down. A guy told me once I was 12 and I was the one making sure my mom was okay when dad's mood shifted. Nobody trained him for that. He just learned that if he wasn't reading the room, someone got hurt. The kid grew up into a man whose alarm still rings at his own dinner table 30 years after that particular fire went out. And for some, it's simpler. One event, an accident, a diagnosis, a night that went completely sideways with zero warning. A body only needs to hear one alarm like that to install it permanently. If any of this hits you, comment, still ringing. Let me know if I can reach out to you. Here's why the alarm doesn't just take your word for it if the fire's out. There's a part of your brain built for one job, threat detection, and it's fast. Faster than reasoning. It doesn't wait for logic. It reads a signal and rings before the thinking part of your brain gets to vote. That's why you can know with total certainty you're safe and still feel like you're not. Knowing doesn't disconnect the alarm. The alarm was never wired to logic. It's wired to pattern. And a well-trained alarm gets very good at finding smoke that isn't there. A car idling too long, a silence at dinner, a missed call from your kid's school. That's called hypervigilance. And I want to say this plainly. If the fire that trained it, the alarm, was exactly right, it kept people alive. The alarm was never the problem. An alarm ringing in a house that already isn't burning, that's the problem. And it's exhausting to live next to. The tiredness isn't laziness, and it's not just depression, though depression rides along with it a lot. It's the cost of a system that's been sounding the clock. You're not fully resting even if you're asleep, because some part of you never actually clocked out. And here's the layer that makes it heavier for a lot of men specifically. You've been taught that a real man handles this, doesn't talk about it, doesn't admit to his wife or kids or his own reflection that he still flinches at nothing. So now you're not just living with the alarm, you're hiding that it's ringing at all, which is its own kind of exhausting. I can tell you that pattern with real confidence. I see some of this version constantly in myself and in the men I sit with. What I can't tell you, not from a video, is which fire actually trained your alarm. That part isn't generic. That's what an actual conversation is for. Here's the part I think we skip past too fast. Scripture's been telling men the fire's out for 3,000 years. We just gave the alarm a clinical name recently. Think about David, not the shepherd boy David, the warrior David, a man who led men into actual battle, who had real blood on his hands and real enemies who wanted him dead. And this is the man who writes, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." That's not a man who's never heard an alarm. That's a man whose alarm rang plenty, telling you exactly how he stayed steady through it. Not by pretending the fire was never real, but by anchoring to something steadier than the alarm itself. The presence of God, right there in the smoke. Here's what I think we forget, though. Paul, writing from a prison cell, under guard, says, "Be anxious for nothing." Not never hear the alarm. Be anxious for nothing. And then he tells you exactly how. With prayer and petition and thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind. That's not grit through it. That's a practice for telling your own alarm the truth. Name what's real out loud. Voice the fear inside of burying it. And deliberately turn toward what's actually here, actually provided right now. So here's the translation plainly. What the clinical world calls hypervigilance, an alarm stuck in the on position, Scripture has always called the loss of trust in God's presence. And the alarm is still ringing. But the fire's already out. He's already with you. That hasn't changed since before you had the alarm at all. So here's the one move that actually convinces the alarm. Not 5 things, one move. And it's built out of the same sentence I gave you at the start. You show the alarm the fire's out. That's the whole practice. You can't argue an alarm into silence. You can't out-logic it, but you can show it. When the ringing starts for no announced reason, You stop. You get your senses to catch up with what's actually true right now. Feet on the floor. What's actually in the room and what's actually there to hear. You're not managing a thought. You're handing the alarm evidence. Look, here's the room. No smoke, no fire. And then, this is the second half of the same move, not a separate step. You reach for one specific true thing about God's faithfulness that you've actually lived, not just heard. The last time I was sure this was falling apart, it didn't. I've stood in the worst fires than this, and he was there. You're not manufacturing a feeling. You're handing the alarm the same evidence Scripture's been handing it for 3,000 years. The fire is out, and you were never standing in it alone. Ground it. Then remember it. Two hands doing one job, showing the alarm what's already true. It's slow, and it's supposed to be. That alarm has been ringing a long time. It won't go quiet in a week. You'll do this, and the alarm will still go off tomorrow morning, and that's not failure. That's just what an old system sounds like while it's learning something new. A little quieter each week. Not gone, just quieter. And it goes faster with somebody else in the room, because one of the deepest ways an alarm learns to trust the all clear is by somebody steady, standing there with you when it rings and not leaving. I've watched a lot of men say the fear out loud for the first time, braced to be judged for it, and the room just holds instead. Nothing collapses. That teaches the alarm something no amount of gritting your teeth could ever do. If you've ever had someone stand with you while the alarm was going off and something in you actually settled because of it, share this with them. Let them know what they did for you. Here's what it looks like when the alarm finally starts believing the fire's out. There's a steadiness that comes back, not silence. Because some alertness is just useful. But the constant low ringing underneath everything finally quiets. A knock at the door stops automatically, meaning something's wrong. You can sit in your own living room and actually be there instead of half standing guard over it. Your wife stops carrying the weight of reassuring you all the time and gets just to be with you. Your kids get a dad who's present at the table, not one who's technically there but still listening for the smoke. That's most of what they'll actually remember about you. And underneath it, the felt sense, not just the belief, the felt sense that you're safe in God's presence. On an ordinary Tuesday, doing the dishes, nobody watching, and nothing to prove. If something in this has hit closer to you than expected, that's not weakness shown. That's the alarm you didn't know was still ringing. A video can hand you the sentence. It can sit with you while you find out exactly what fire installed yours or how loud it actually is. That's the work I do with men one-on-one, in person or over Zoom. If that's where you're at, reach out and contact me. I'll be happy to sit with you and find out where it got installed at. You're not broken beyond repair. You're not less of a man for the alarm still ringing. You're a man whose alarm did exactly what it was built to do. Now it just needs to hear what you already know. The alarm is still ringing. The fire's already out. That's the whole shift. from broken to beloved, and is closer than it feels right now.